We're far enough into this digital ag thing that you're not going to be impressing anyone with an ag tech tool unless it has a clear and seamless way to convert insight into action. Increasingly, that has to happen in a fully automated way to compete.
So after 4 years of messing around with drones, we realized that farmers don't pay for just pure play analytics, at least in our case. The constant feedback was, if you know what's wrong on my farm, come and fix it. Just don't tell me it's wrong.
That's Niqo Robotics founder Jaisimha Rao. He's an impressive entrepreneur, but just as important is how much real farm work him and his team have accomplished with their robots in the Indian market.
Everybody thinks, see and spray, spot spraying technology, there are multiple names to it, is yet to take off here. But we have already sprayed 120,000 acres in India and kind of worked with over 2,000 farmers.
What's even more interesting to me than the tech companies like Niqo are building is how that technology is being commercialized to get to farmers.
We need to stop talking about AI and start talking about who's servicing it, what's the downtime like, how many units are out there. I think that commercial narrative is beginning to creep in.
Jaisimha Rao of Niqo Robotics on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hamrich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, and investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Today's episode was recorded live at FIRA USA in Woodland, California last month. If you're not familiar with FIRA, it is the premier event for agricultural robotics and autonomous solutions in action. If you want more of my personal reflections and takeaways from the event, just go back a couple episodes and listen to episode 439. But I wanted to feature this interview with Jaisimha Rao as a standalone episode for a few important reasons. First, I think his story as a finance guy turned farmer turned ag tech founder is just interesting in and of itself. Also, he uncovers what I think are some very real insights about ag tech that he's learned over the past decade or so in this industry that I think you all are going to really appreciate. And then they're just a great example of an ag robotics company that is making real impact on farms, not just doing demos and talking about what the future might hold. Because what I've been most excited about lately in all of ag tech is seeing this commercialization of ag robotics and automation, especially in high-value crops. But as you heard a couple episodes ago, also in cereal crops or row crops as well. Now, walking around FIRA last month, I have to admit that my first reaction was, all of this looks really familiar. Most of the technology has either been around a while or it looks like other machines that have. So at first glance, you might wonder, okay, are we just kind of stagnating out there? Are we just kind of copying each other, just kind of doing the same old? But then you go talk to the founders of these companies and the other representatives of these companies about what they're actually doing with the technology, how many farms they're working with, and how many hours they have already under their belt. In Niqo's case, it's over 50 autonomous sprayers running in India right now that have operated on over 120,000 acres, and the company has worked with over 2,000 farmers. That's what has me so excited about what's happening out there, what's new or like relatively new, and what seems to be changing and evolving. There definitely is a groundswell underway, in my opinion, especially in high value crops or what you might want to call specialty crops. Niqo is now not only expanding in India, but also bringing their technology to the North American specialty crop market with their Niqo Robo Thinner, which they had on display at FIRA. In this episode, Jaisimha is going to talk a lot about how they have developed their technology in a way where the actuation, what work the robot ends up performing, is somewhat flexible. They can do a lot of different things because they've built up the brains of the operation when it comes to their robots. I'm going to let him provide a lot more details about him, Niqo, what they're doing, and their technology. It really was one of my favorite conversations that I got to have at FIRA. So enjoy today's episode with Jaisimha Rao of Niqo Robotics.
I grew up in the Middle East, out of all places in the world, Kuwait. So spent 18 years of my life there. And then from Kuwait, I moved to wonderful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to do my undergrad. So I went to Carnegie Mellon and graduated in 2007. And unfortunately, instead of going West Coast and being Facebook employee number, I don't know, say 100, I went East Coast and joined BlackRock Financial. This is August 2007, when nothing can stop Wall Street. And 1 year later, we all know what happened. But luckily for me, when 2008 happened, Lehman and AIG collapsed, and the US government bailed them out. And they gave that portfolio of burnt out securities to BlackRock to manage, like one division of BlackRock. And I got roped into that. So as the world was blowing up, our business actually did better because we were the special situations group almost. So I think for me personally, I cut my teeth. So one of the crazy things about BlackRock is, at least initially, you got to show up to work at 6:30 in the morning. You show up at 6:31, it's considered late. And on Friday, they name and shame you. Like, that's how hardcore it is. I think it's fine. I think when you're 21, 22, you need that rigor. I think the funny part, I joke, is it's a struggle to get my computer vision engineers in my office right now by 10:30. So I almost sound like a granddad saying, when I was young, I used to show up at 6:30. But I did that for close to 7 years. And then I think at 28, I hit the tipping point of, is this what life is going to be? Or can I roll the dice and be my own boss? Can I run my own business? So I quit New York, moved to Bangalore, where we are originally from. And us as a family, we grow coffee. So I went to our coffee plantation, like we call it there. And that's when I realized, hey, look, ag is interesting. It's fun. Like just romantically being in the mountains, growing coffee under shade. I think that's fun. But also it's completely untouched when it comes to new technology, at least on my farm. So there's a problem, there's technology. I think the final thing was, is there money to be made? And yeah, I think my coffee plantation is relatively profitable. It's not great, but it is not losing money. So I think everything came together and said, hey, let's go after ag. This is back in 2014 was the idea, and we incorporated the company in 2015. 2015 to 2019, I was bootstrapped. I was actually allergic to venture capital money. I thought I could just do this by myself. Very quickly, you realize that when you see your personal net worth decrease year after year, that's not a good feeling either. So after 4 years of messing around with drones, so flying drones and doing stand counts and different kinds of analytics, we realized that farmers don't pay for just pure play analytics, at least in our case. The constant feedback was, if you know what's wrong on my farm, come and fix it. Just don't tell me it's wrong. So this one learning took me 4 years to figure out. So in 2019, we decided, okay, maybe we have cool technology around computer vision, but just this analytics won't work. So we need to add the hardware piece. We also need to, in addition to the advice, we need to solve problems. So in 2019 is when we raised our first venture capital round. And from 2019 to now, we have really doubled down on our smart camera. And we had a couple of rounds of funding. And we have 50 of our self-propelled sprayers out in India that are currently doing spot spraying and saving 50% for fungicide and insecticides with cotton farmers. And I think we joke that everybody thinks, see and spray, spot spraying technology, there are multiple names to it, is yet to take off here. But we have already sprayed 120,000 acres in India and kind of worked with over 2,000 farmers. So it's not an elevator pitch, but it's been a roller coaster ride. And I think talking to you, Tim, here, we are super excited to bring that technology to America and see how we can help farmers grow their margins here.
Absolutely. Well, tell me what you've learned about the business model in growing the company so far, especially in a country like India, where the average farmer is so much smaller. What's the business model that actually brings this, to the farm?
Yeah, I think every region is different. In India, obviously, we're working with farmers that have very, very small acreage. And in general, farmers rent their equipment. So the business model that we have we have used in India is what we call a VLE-led model. So the VLE stands for a village level entrepreneur. So this is someone who generally has about 1,000, 2,000 acres of influence around that region. He's providing different services like seeds, tractor as a service, crop chemical protection, and he's an entrepreneur. He's providing different services to the region. So this VLE leases the unit from us, pays us a yearly fee, and then he in turn charges per acre to growers, to farmers there. So I think that's predominantly, if the equipment gets relatively expensive, like this kind of equipment, that's the model that has worked really well for us, and that allows you to scale in terms of acres quite quickly.
Yeah. And how is selling to that model different from what you're going to bring to North America here? Is it different in terms of how you have to go to market, how you have to approach things, how you have to price things, or is it about the same?
I think as soon as acres go up, the business model changes dramatically. And obviously acres here are much bigger. So me as a coffee farmer myself, I hate depending on someone to do the service on my farm because the windows are so short. I like to own equipment, and I think North American growers are the same. So the business model here, we kept it super simple. We sell our units for one single price. It's $250,000, no annual fee. You own the equipment from a pure price standpoint. The other realization is we as Niqo, we don't have any ambition to go direct. In fact, our real customer, if you ask me, is the dealer. So how do we give enough margin to the dealer distributor network here in the US so that he's happy to go and service the farmers? So I think that's the model that we are employing.
And economics wise, that price point to the VLEs in India, does that give them enough to get excited about their own return on investment there?
Yeah, I think for the way we priced it, I think we priced it aggressively. So obviously we want spot spraying technology to scale quickly. But even with the economics that we currently have, for 6 months worth of work, previously it was zero, and now that 6 months revenue that they are getting, can take care of whole family there.
So you said previously it was zero. Explain that. What do you mean?
So if you're let's take entire crop cycle, for example, cotton. So these entrepreneurs, number one work that they'll do is they'll till your land, they plow your land, so they get it ready. So that they're employed. Then they seed it. Okay, that's another revenue source. Then between seeding and harvesting, it's downtime for them. They're just waiting for harvest to again come and harvest your cotton. So what spot spraying technology does is that 180 days or where they're just waiting for work, now they have this new piece of equipment where they're generating money, where previously it was zero.
And the status quo at that point is that the farmer would hire crews or do it themselves, go out and weed?
Knapsack-based spraying. So you just hire a human being carrying toxic chemical behind their back and backpack spraying, which is not good. It's excessive spraying, it's bad for the plants, and most importantly, it's super dangerous for the human. And now you're doing it through a machine spot spray.
Mm-hmm. Now you went to Carnegie Mellon, which is actually a really good robotics university, but is that what you studied? You ended up at BlackRock. So I thought the story was going different directions. At first I'm like, okay, robotics, that makes sense. And then BlackRock, oh, I didn't see that coming. And now, Kuwait, so what gave you the confidence that I could start a robotics company?
Yeah, I think definitely Carnegie Mellon is one of the places where I think robotics was born. So even at my time there from 2003 to 7, I don't know if you know, there's this big robotics challenge from the government to do autonomous driving. It's called the DARPA. So even today, all the autonomous technology that you see today is actually born from that 2003 to 2005 era of autonomously driving a Hummer through, obstacles. I studied computer engineering, so I think I got a taste of that. But like I said, I got greedy and chased the money. So maybe that 7 years at BlackRock, I could have done something more useful. But look, I think the thing that I enjoy the most now is actually solving technology problems. Like, how do you make sure our robot in Yuma, Arizona is able to spot spray on weeds with 80 milliseconds latency? And I think it's all purely a software problem. So it's good to come back to why I majored in computer engineering. Did I have the confidence to do a robotic startup? Probably not. And by the way, I mean, Tim, right? Like, February of next year, it's 10 years since I quit New York and came here. If someone told me it's going to take 10 years to launch your first product in North America, all right, you're crazy. But it's been a long journey. And I think another thing, the interesting part of my background as an Indian growing up in Kuwait, studying in Pittsburgh and then New York, it gives me a nice world view on what's similar all around the world. I feel like farmers are similar anywhere you go. But at the same time, hyper-local cultural differences you need to be aware of, you need to recognize it, and you need to kind of tilt it in your favor while you're trying to build a business.
Right. And you've built a business for years without venture capital and now for years with venture capital. What changed or what had to change for you to lose your allergy to VC money?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of hubris from 2015 to 19 where I said I saved a bunch of money from BlackRock. I don't need to sell percentage equity stake in my company. But very quickly you realize, especially in ag, a lot of the money does go in just operations, flying to farms, shipping equipment, and that your personal runway quickly runs out. So I think while I thought my savings could get me there, I was magnitude off in terms of what does it take to even build an MVP in ag. So I think when you realize that, luckily we have venture capital. I think people bash venture capital, like, hey, is it a fit for agtech, etc. I think I'm very clear that we wouldn't be here without venture capital. And if you have venture capital from folks who are connected in ag, they do realize there's no hockey stick growth. This is like compounding growth. There is a moat in the business, and eventually you can accrete the value. So yeah, I think that is a switch. Like when personal runway goes to zero, you knock on doors. And like I said, you know a bunch of our cap table as well, Tim. So I'm glad that capital is available for us to get to this point.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned, building a moat. What does that look like? We're here at FIRA USA. There's a lot of really interesting companies, some of which are kind of doing similar things. So how do you build that moat in this environment?
Yeah, I think before I talk about the moat, I'm generally an open book, Tim. So I have to reveal to you, like, what does it take to build a spot spraying robot? We use a Sony sensor. So that's made in Japan. We use an NVIDIA chip made in the US. We train on a cloud, Microsoft Azure cloud in Seattle. So we don't have any pricing competitive advantage just because we're in India. Because we get Japanese prices, we get American prices for the chip, and we get the same Azure prices. So the only way we are better than, say, some of our competition is our engineering philosophy is frugality. And by frugality, doesn't mean cheap. It's squeezing out more from less. So when we build a robot, we take the entry-level chips and figure out how can we squeeze out more compute through pure software engineering so that we don't pass on that expense to the growers. So I think some of the other ag robotics startups, at least in the US, you don't have to be so frugal upfront. And it's very hard to build a more efficient robot when you already established your tech stack. So for us, since our first target customer was India, was razor thin margins, we were able to build for that customer and then move here. So that's one. Like I said, does Sony, NVIDIA, and Azure have a moat? Yes. So what is our moat? Is it really on the hardware? I don't think so. India itself has close to 120 million hectares of farmland. For us, that's home court advantage in that 120 million hectares is data there for collecting. We have probably the lowest cost labeling services in India. And those two alone in itself can keep us ahead of the competition. So more data equals better accuracy equals better performance. And we have that in boatloads in India. So how do you make use of home court advantage in India and kind of sell abroad? So I think that's probably unique about us.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit about, California likes to pride itself as like the home of tech and innovation, and then maybe, we could start these high value crops here and go elsewhere, but you kind of see it differently. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we are trying to bring here to FIRA and just showcase the ecosystem here is, while we respect our competitors, I don't think all agtech or all startups is hostage just to California. And Niqo, we are proud that we are born in India and we are able to, instead of technology trickling down from the west to the east, we are really proud that how can you bubble up technology from east to the west. So one of the things that I said yesterday of the demo is like we want to change the perception of how the West views the East, and if our product can work as good as the folks here reliably, then maybe bubbling up technology is not a surprise after all.
Yeah. And your product is here. You showed a demo, and I think for some people they would look at that and be like, "Oh, that's the vision." But just in the few minutes I spent with you, I can tell there's more to the vision for you. So talk about what you see going forward for Niqo Robotics. What is that vision that drives you to keep building?
Yeah, I think the product that you saw yesterday, Tim, was I like to break down the robot into three different things. So the robot is essentially the eyes, brains, and hands. And the eyes, in our case, are the camera. The brains is the compute, which we also built in the camera. And the hands is what you actuate. So right now at FIRA here, we're launching our Niqo Robo Thinner specifically for lettuce growers here to improve their thinning operations. But if the eyes and the brains is the core IP that we have, and what happens after that, we're agnostic. So do you want to spray? Do you want to mechanically actuate blades? Do you want to trigger a laser? That's something that's always changed. So the vision for Niqo is try and get constantly better on the camera and compute. And I think we will work with partners on figuring out what the actuation system is. Is it mechanical? Is it laser? Do we build it in-house? Do we just partner with folks? So I think that's probably, product level, the vision. The other vision for us in terms of who do we want to first solve for, the non-broad acre markets. So there are these pockets of, say, million, sub-million acres where maybe some of the bigger OEMs, it's too small for them. And farmers don't have the chemistry to take care of weeds, don't have the chemistry to protect their plants. And we feel that's a nice fit for us because in general, our products really shine when the units need to go slower, but you need to be more precise. And I think the non-broadacre markets are probably super exciting for us over here.
Well, everybody talks about you're talking about the brains of the operation. Everybody talks about like smart farming as if it's like binary, like we were dumb before, but now we're smart. But smart's a spectrum, right? So where do you think we are on that spectrum of like how much more developed can the brains of equipment like this get?
Yeah, I think if you ask me, since I've been in this industry for 10 years. It seems like over the last couple of years and the conversations we're having, specifically with growers, there is a nice meeting point now where expectation of grower is more realistic. Like you're selling AI, you're selling smart. Can it do everything? No. Can it do one thing really nicely all the time? Maybe. We as founders, as agtech folks, I think we have also learned like you don't want to oversell AI is going to solve all your problems. So I feel like where are we now? It seems like people are starting to talk on the same language now. Like, hey, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. And farmers themselves are more practical. So it seems like there's a shake hand now. I think if you were there for other conferences, in generally when you hear these panels, it's like, hey, don't tell me how the sausage is made. Just give me a machine that works. And I feel like those conversations are changing. And I think we're at the beginning now. Some of us over here need to win. And we need to stop talking about AI and start talking about who's servicing it, what's the downtime like, how many units are out there. I think that commercial narrative is beginning to creep in. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I definitely have noticed that. Yeah. Yeah, especially just in the last maybe 2 years since the venture capital hype has gone down a little bit. It seems like everybody's sort of back to reality, both on on the consumer side and on the company side. So for you taking on venture capital, did that have to change your vision at all of where the company ends up? Because they're going to want an exit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another unique thing about where I believe we have a super edge being from India. I don't think many people know about this. the Indian public markets, so the stock markets right now are probably at an all-time high. And what we are seeing in India is startups like us who get to $20 million revenue with, which is not a crazy number, with decent profit margins. There is a clear path towards having a $300, $400 million IPO at $20 million revenue. So I think that also reduces the stress on me as a founder. So for me, the milestone is how do you get to $20 million profitably, and we can list in the Indian stock exchange. And then if the investors want to cash out, they cash out. If they want to be with us, they can be with us. So again, it's more practical. Did I tell you $1 billion? No, because I don't know how many $1 billion exits have been in ag. One, maybe. So I think that is also a nice off-ramp for us. We're having really practical, healthy conversations with our investors saying, where does this go? And I think the milestone of listing in the Indian stock market and keeping their shares liquid, I think it's a reality. It's not I'm not selling snake oil here. So I think that's also home court advantage for us being from India.
Okay. Very cool. Well, anything else we should make sure we get on tape before I let you go?
No, I just wanted to give you a shout out. We're based in Bangalore, and Bangalore has the worst traffic in the world. And your soothing voice in my car keeps me company.
Glad to hear that.
So you're a lot of ag startups are familiar with your voice because of the traffic. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. All right, well, that is going to do it for today's episode from FIRA USA with Jaisimha Rao of Niqo Robotics. Highly encourage you to go check out what they're doing at their website, which is just niqorobotics.com. I'm looking at their website now. It's got that Niqo Robo Thinner right there on the front page. So for no other reason, just to see what that Niqo Robo Thinner looks like, go check that out there. And thank you again to Jaisimha for the time and for the interview at FIRA. Really am excited about everything that's happening in robotics and automation. Obviously, I'm coming off the high of the event, of getting to see so much there and getting to talk to so many people. But I definitely think the excitement has the underpinnings of a very real groundswell that's happening in this area. And I'm certainly excited to be a very, very tiny part of it and getting to talk about it here on this podcast. I have at least 2 more episodes worth of content from FIRA. It might have to wait till 2025 because I'm running out of time to get it all put together this year. But stay tuned for that. And obviously more robotics content coming your way that didn't happen at FIRA, but that I'm so excited about. I keep asking questions and finding new people to bring onto the show. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening. I do not take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.